channel and to another Retail Horror Stories. Please excuse my appearance. I am in the middle of my checklist for our initial walkthrough, which is happening really soon. So I'm like cleaning and packing and doing stuff like that. My son finally fell asleep, so I thought I would come on here because today is Thursday and I have to get Retail Horror Stories up tomorrow. So I think I'm gonna finally tell you guys how I got fired at Converse. If you missed the very first Converse story, I will link it down below. Let's see, where do I begin? So let's start off with talking about a little bit more about P, who was the store manager of this Converse. If you didn't know, I was a assistant manager at Converse outlet in Las Vegas, the South store. There's a north and a south outlet. Anyways, so I was an assistant manager. I was like 21 at the time. And by this time I had been working there for about over a year. So when I very first got there, this store manager, P, was douchebaggery all over the place. And I'm sorry for my language. I feel like I get a little bit more colorful with it in these videos just because I get so upset. And this one is going to be no exception. So if I do curse, I really am sorry, but here's a forewarning in case you do have children in the room, which I completely understand, you know what I mean? Not everybody has the same views on cursing, you know what I mean? Anyway, so when I very first got there, store manager P, he had what we used to call flavors of the month. And so he would like pick people throughout the month and pick on them, like literally. He was like very verbally, like he thought he was funny, you know what I mean? Because he was quite a bit older than all the rest of us. Like every other worker there, except for like maybe two, were really young, like in their 20s and younger even, you know what I mean? And so, he like, I don't know, he like tried to fit in and he like tried to crack jokes. And so he would just like pick on people, not only like verbally, but he would like tear them apart as far as like the job goes. And he would like write them up. Like when I very first got there were two other assistant managers and they got written up for not filling out a board. Like we had this like board from like that you see in like elementary school rooms of like stuff you had to do every single night. It was literally on one of those boards where it had like a different line and like almost where you would put like gold stars, you know what I mean? And so I remember when I very first got hired there, they got written up for not filling out that board and I was just like, oh my God, like, okay, so don't you forget to fill out the board, I guess, you know? And so one particular assistant manager that was in that group that got written up, like he picked on her for that whole entire month. I remember he just like was going at her. And so she actually stepped down. She's like, I'm not going to do assistant manager anymore. It's bullshit. Excuse my language. And she actually she got another job. And so she just became a part-timer. So anyways, keep that in mind. So like fast forward to when I'm about to get fired, it was my turn, obviously. So he had written me up one time for mood swings. He said that my mood fluctuated too often and it affected the employees around me. If you know me, like, it's not the case. I'm pretty, you know what I mean, level. I like get really high, but I don't really like get that low or take it out on people like that, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like because I was younger and I was an assistant manager, I was like probably I was the youngest assistant manager at the time. And so I felt like the other part-timers, some of them were a little bit older than me and some were like my age, like they didn't really take me seriously. And so I was like kind of hard in that aspect with like the other part-timers, like they didn't take me seriously. And so they thought they could just do whatever they wanted. And you know what I mean? Like I wasn't going to say anything. And so I was constantly having to talk to a couple of them that again, were the ones who worked back in shoes. And then not Jess, you guys remember Jess from the first story. So let's get back to, you know, Paul picking on me. That was another thing is, so Jess and I now are like super close, right? Super close. And so at the time, you know, her and I met there and she was like a couple years younger than me. Mind you, I'm 21 and I'm living in Las Vegas. So I did a little bit of the party scene, you know what I mean? And I had a boyfriend that I was living with who was an idiot. And he was like a party animal, and so I was, you know what I mean, like kind of a little bit of a rebel, if I do say so myself. I did, you know what I mean, like what every 21-year-old does living in Sin City. Not everything, everything, but we just went out and partied, you know what I mean? Like, we went to clubs, we drank, never did drugs or anything like that, being completely honest. Like, I would never have done drugs, just being honest. So anyways, Jess was only 19, I think, at the time. And so, you know, she had a boyfriend, and she, like, had just gotten out of high school, you know, like, the year before. And so she had her own set of friends. But when her and I were at work together, like, we were super close, you know what I mean? Like, we had a really good time, and she was a really hard worker. She still is, but you know what I mean? She was my hardest worker, and she, like, totally helped me in that place, you know what I mean? Like, she kept me sane. And so he wrote me up for, what is it called when you, like, conferring with, you know what I mean, like, lower people, like, what is that called? You guys know what I mean. I'm having a brain fart. Like, fraternizing. I can't say that word. With, you know what I mean, part-timers when I was a assistant manager. Mind you, her and I never hung outside of work. Like, just because we were close at work and her and I had fun, like, he saw that as, like, a threat. And he did that with a lot of people. Like, you know, we became close. Like, we were a close little, close-knit group. We really were. And I did hang out with other people that were older, you know what I mean? Like, they would come out and party, and I met my boyfriend at the time through another guy that worked there. And so, like, we were close, but Jessica never came out with that group. Because number one, she was underage, and number two, like, that wasn't really her scene. She wasn't a party girl. And so, obviously, because she was underage. But anyway, so he wrote me up for fraternizing, I don't know why I can't say that word, with a part-timer. Mind you, we never hung out outside of work. So I got written up twice for mood swing and hanging out with Jessica, even though we never hung out outside of work. So just keep that in mind. So, okay. There's another employee, part-timer, who worked in clothing. He really was, like, the register kid, you know what I mean? And so we're gonna call him C. So C he likes to push buttons. He liked to be irritating, you know what I mean? And so he was on his last strike, okay? He was, like I said, the register kid, and so at the end of everyone's shift, they had, like, a new rule that when you were done, you had to count out your drawer at the end of your shift, because we were having so many issues with, like, shortages and things, and overages even. Like, they look at that as a fault as well. So, you know, this new rule comes up that at the end of the night, the manager was the one counting the drawers, and then we counted them again in the morning to make sure nothing crazy was going on. And so there was just, like, over short every single night. Like, it wasn't, like, just pennies, it was, like, dollars, you know? And so they made that new rule, and so this kid had already had 2 strikes against him with his drawer not balancing. And so let me just set up the scene for you. So it's, like, in the middle of the day, and I was a mid, and so I came in at 11 and left at 8 because we had to take hour lunches as managers. I think everyone had an hour lunch, actually, or maybe, like, part-timers only had a half hour. Anyway, so I had an hour lunch every single day that you had to clock out for. A whole hour. Okay, so you remember R, the big, tall, giant idiot that all of a sudden was best friends with P, the store manager? So he's there with me, and I think he was the morning shift. And then there's another assistant manager there, and we're gonna call her B for the B word. Oh, she was such a bitch. Anyways, so there's 3 of us there, right? And it's my turn to take lunch. So I clock out, I'm in the back, you know, and Jess and C are up front, and they were both, like, working the registers and doing clothing, you know, soft line. And B is in charge of, like, shoes, and she really is, like, second in command in the store. She had been at the store the longest, you know what I mean? Like, she had dealt with the stuff the longest, and she wasn't super close to P because he was such a jerk, and, like, she had already been through her flavor of the month, you know what I mean? And he did pick on her as well. But anyway, she's, like, second in command at the store pretty much just because of seniority. And so I'm walking out because it's obviously a big, huge mall, and I don't want to sit in the back, you know what I mean, for an hour. I always, like, went shopping, went and got lunch, whatever. So I come walking out, and right as I hit shoes, Jess approached me, and she was like, C is $5 even short in his drawer, like he's gonna get fired. And I was like, oh crap, you know. And she's like, but that's not all. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, R is letting him take $5 of his own money and put it in the drawer. And I was like, what? Like, that breaks so many rules, you know what I mean? And so I go walking up front, and R is like double counting his drawer, and he has the $5 bill like sitting right next to him. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot do this. And he was like, I'm blocking the cameras, like were right behind us at the counter to like see into the drawers, you know, and what we were doing. And he was like, I'm blocking the camera. They can't even see through me, you know, cause he's a huge dude. And so, you know, I'm like shaking my head. I'm like, I'm off the clock. You know what I mean? I was like, this isn't right. You're going to get in trouble. Like, but there's nothing I can do about it. C isn't my friend. R isn't my friend. If they want to get in trouble, like, that's their business. You know what I mean? And so I go to lunch, and the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like this is so wrong. And if I approach P about this, he's going to side with R because, as I told you, they're like super close. So C, the kid who was short in the drawer, he is just gonna get in trouble when R is the one who like should get in trouble as well. You know what I mean? Like, I felt bad that C was gonna get fired regardless because his drawer was short and we had the 3-strike rule. But for R to like think that the rules don't like apply to him because he's like buddy with the store manager, like that really, you know, ticked me off. And so, you know, I come back and Jess is feeling the same exact way. And so we approach B because she's second in command. And so we like ask her, like, what should we do? Should we tell P? And she's like, no, do not tell P. He's not going to do anything. She's like, just leave it alone. You weren't even here, blah, 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 blah. So Jess and I, like, I think that was the first time like her and I were like really texting each other, and we were talking about it all that night. And I was opening the next morning. And so was she. She was there with me. And so her and I decide that we're going to meet in the parking lot at the mall, you know, a little bit earlier. Like we said, we were going to get there at like 6:30, and we didn't have to be there until 7. And so her and I get there, and we, you know, got in my car, and we called the hotline for anonymous, you know what I mean? Like, you can report stuff, and because we really felt like that wasn't fair. Like, R was already getting away with murder in the store, and P was such a douchebag, you know what I mean? Like, we were just like pissed, you know? And so we're like, this isn't fair. And we like called, like I said, Nike owns Converse, and so we called the Nike hotline, explained what happened, you know, everything like that. And we told them that we wanted to remain anonymous and everything, but we did work in the store, and we just felt like if it was brought to light that it was us, that our store manager was going to take it out on us. And also the fact that the store manager and the assistant manager who partook in, you know what I mean, like breaking the rule, were buddy. Like, they were hanging out outside of work with each other, which, I mean, as a store manager, should you be hanging out with your assistant managers? That's the same thing as me hanging out with Jess outside of work, which is what I got written up for, even though her and I had never even done it, right? So, you know, we like resume with work and everything like that, and I think it was like 2 days later, maybe it wasn't even, maybe it was the next day after that, I got called in. Did I get called in, or I was already there? So P brought me to the back, you know, I can't remember if he called me in or what, and, you know, brings me to the back and asks me what happened. And I'm thinking, there's no way, like, you know what I mean? I just reported this. Like, how do you even know about it? And he says that B, that stupid bitch, told him everything. After she told me and Jessica not to say anything to Paul, she wanted to be the one to tell him. She wanted to be the one that wasn't in trouble. She wanted to be the one that was like the hero in the situation, letting him know that, you know what I mean, he could trust her and blah, 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 even though like she told us not to tell him. So we were like, I, you know, was in my mind like fuming, pissed, fuming. And not to mention the fact B and I like were friends, you know what I mean? Like, her and I hung outside of work. And so it was just like super shady. I was pissed. Oh, I was so pissed. And he was like, so you're suspended. And I was like, what? And he's like, you're suspended for not telling me anything. And I was like, I don't understand, like, I don't trust you. Like, I flat out told him, like, I don't trust you because you and R are buddy, you know? And he was like, well, I talked to corporate and, or not corporate, it was like our district manager. He said that he had talked to her and that they just decided till they could figure out what exactly happened that me, R, and C were getting suspended. Mind you, I wasn't even on the clock. Number one. Number two, like, I wasn't involved. I wasn't standing over there. Like, I wasn't, you know what I mean, involved in this whatsoever. So why would I have to report it to you anyways? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I was thinking. And so he's like, you know, I'm going to give you a couple of days. It'll be a couple of days until we call you back in and we'll let you know our decision. I was like, our decision on what? Like, what are you talking about? Am I, like, gonna get fired for this? Oh my god, you know? And so, like, I can't even remember what it was. Like, they gave you a piece of paper, like, explaining your suspension without pay, and you had to, like, sign it. And the reason was, like, I can't even remember what the reason was. So anyways, like, the technical reason, you know? And so a couple days later, I get a phone call, and he's like, come on in, and I'm going to have the back door open for you. I don't want you going in the front. And right then I knew that I was going to get fired. And so he sits me down and tells me that the reason that they're firing me is for, like, getting with R and plotting against the store. Again, I wasn't on the clock. I had no, like, I didn't participate in any of this nonsense, and R got fired and C got fired that same day, and they, like, cashed out my vacation pay and my sick pay because, again, I was a full-time employee and everything like that, and told me I wasn't going to receive any other benefits like unemployment or anything because I was being terminated for, like, breaking the rules and everything. And so I, like, broke down. I had never been fired before. I was, like, my parents raised me to be a really hard worker, and I really was, and I loved this job, even without P being there, you know what I mean? Like, it was just such a freaking awesome job. It was, like, my favorite job that I've ever had. Honestly, it really was. It was just so cool. And so I was like, I called the number and, like, told them everything, and he's like, I don't care who you called. Like, he was screaming back at me, and I'm, like, crying, and he was like, you need to leave out the back, and it was, like, a huge mess. And I, like, am living in an apartment, you know what I mean, with my boyfriend who was a tattoo artist, cliche, and he, like, was working out of our apartment, you know what I mean? He was a really good artist, he really was, but you know what I mean? Like, he wasn't making a lot of money. I was basically paying for everything. And then not even, like, 2 weeks after that, my great-grandmother had gotten sick, and while I was down there in Arizona, she lived in a place called Golden Valley, Arizona. It's, like, right outside of Kingman. Right outside of Laughlin, Kingman area, and it's in between the two. And while I was down there dealing with my sick great-grandmother who had cancer, the boyfriend cheats on me, and so him and I got into a huge fight, and it turned violent, and that was, like, a really disgusting situation. I feel like I want to do a video on that, you know what I mean? But anyway, so I had lost my job. My boyfriend cheated on me and then beat me up and then moved out. So now I'm, like, completely paying for this apartment, you know what I mean? And so I was, like, freaking out. I had to go on food stamps, and then the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to fight this whole unemployment thing, you know what I mean? Because I, like, was having such a hard time. I found a part-time job at Old Navy. And, you know, that's not going to pay my rent. That's not going to pay for anything. And I had just gotten a brand new car. That was another thing. I just bought a brand new, like, it was in 2009. It was a 2009, like, badass, like, Honda, you know what I mean? Like, red, like, super cool, like, speedy car, you know what I mean? Brand new. And the rent, or the car payment on that was, like, $300. And my insurance was, like, $300 because I was under, like, $225 and brand new car, you know what I mean? Like, so all of this stuff, like, it was insane that this had happened. And so I fought it at the unemployment office. I told them the reason why I got suspended was the opposite reason of why I got fired. I had proof that I had called the hotline and followed protocol when something like this happens, not to mention the fact that I wasn't even on the clock, so I couldn't even be held responsible by guidelines, you know what I mean? And so they, like, set a hearing, and they give the opportunity for the employer to show up with, like, lawyers and everything like that, and nobody ever showed up, which it defaulted to me. So I was granted unemployment, and that helped a little bit, but because I had already found the part-time at Old Navy, I didn't get as much, you know what I mean? So that's when my best friend Chris moved into the apartment with me, and so it was a nightmare. It was awful, and that's how I got fired from Converse, for something that I wasn't even a part of, for, you know what I mean, being, I don't know, the flavor of the month. I had already been written up, and that's what else counted against me, but both of the write-ups were complete nonsense. So, that's it. That's how I got fired from my favorite job ever. Isn't that sad? To be 19, or to be 21 again. Not that it wasn't that long ago, but you know what I mean. So, anyways, that is it for this retail horror story. If you've ever been fired from a job, let me know down below, like, what kind of nonsense you had to go through. I would love to hear that. And I love you guys so, so much. And if you have not checked out the Pampered Chef giveaway, do so. I'll link that video down below as well. So Converse video and Pampered Chef video, because I always I always say I'm gonna link this down below, and then I forget, because by the time I'm done uploading it, like, I edited the video like hours before, so I forget. So I'm gonna remind myself. But anyways, I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new, hello and welcome. My name is Brittany Cocco, and you are watching the Cocco Channel. Sorry, I'm like a huge hot mess today with bare minimum makeup, but anyways, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Oh, I wanted to tell you guys too, Alana, my girl from New Zealand that I did a swap with, finally started she started a YouTube channel, and so I'm gonna link that down below if you guys want to see what I sent her. She got her box and did an unboxing, and it was so good. So if you want to see what I got her, since I already filmed mine unboxing like months ago, it hasn't been that long, but anyways, I'll link that down below as well.
Hold on. Helicopter.